for guys who are chasing aesthetics, they probably don't need to bulk. And I'm not saying you don't need to gain weight, but what I'm saying is if you're underweight and thin, you can probably focus on just lean gains. And again, this is kind of a revelation I've come to over the years as coaching, both observing some of the newer studies that have come out, as well as observing my own clients over the years, particularly my clients who were weight class athletes, who I needed to keep them inside of a weight class, and we did very, very conservative bulks, enough that people wouldn't really count them as bulks, gaining 10 pounds in a year, then cutting again. Right? 10 pounds in a year is really nothing because the fat gain is almost insignificant because you figure a lot of that's muscle. And these same people would then cut down. They would regress, though, when they would cut part of that 10 pounds. And then as they came back up, they would surpass where they were. I mean, for example, like I had one guy, we'd start at 170, bulk him to about 180, 181, then we'd cut down to 170 again and repeat. And we would do that bulk over 9 or 10 months every year. We did this like 3 years in a row. And, his squat would go down a little, but then by the time he got back to say 175, he would be hitting PRs on the squat again. Okay. So in other words, he would regain all the strength he lost on the cut. But I began to eventually, ask the question of, do these people really need to even bulk 10 pounds a year? If they are only capable of gaining, like 3 pounds of muscle a year as advanced lifters, this guy was like a 500-pound squatter by the time I was done with him, do they really need to be doing that at all? Is it necessary to gain fat if you're not shredded? And I'm going to say no. For people who aren't contest lean, there's no real reason for you to gain any real measurable amount of body fat in order to gain muscle. So I would say to a lot of guys, and I'm not talking about the skinny fat guy, unless they can accept that they're going to get really, really skinny if they cut down. But even then, if they're chasing a certain aesthetic goals, I don't know that that's the worst idea in the world. They just have to accept they're going to be small and weak for a year or two. Okay, but cutting down to a body fat that you are happy with, right? Kind of what you see me working on here in this, I'm trimming down and realizing I'm probably not going to bulk or get fatter. I'm probably never going to be fatter than I am even in this video at any point in the future, all right? In fact, I'll probably try to stay leaner than this year round. And again, it's that same concept of get to a body fat that you are comfortable with and happy with, that you think looks good, and then focus on lean gains. And I remember this even before some of these studies. I remember like my bro Viata, who stays pretty dang lean year round, and again coaches hybrid athletes. You're talking about a guy who deadlifts over 600 pounds and does ultra marathons. He'd kind of said, look, you can just slowly gain very slow amounts of weight over the years and you'll be just fine. He's like, you don't have to gain 20 pounds in a year. He's like, you can look at the scale and go, I went up a few pounds this year. And he's like, and people will make gains just fine doing that. There's no problem with anyone gaining significant muscle doing that. And meaning someone could be 10 or 12% body fat and just stay there. And as long as they're getting enough protein and they are getting sufficient calories to where they're not really actively losing weight, they're going to gain muscle. And I think when you look at it from that perspective, it largely starts eliminating the bulk and cut cycle of people losing their abs and doing all this stuff. And then, some of us got so caught up in this idea like where you can't just stay lean. Well, you can't stay contest rip, but you can stay lean enough to have a six pack. You can stay there year round. And when people lose that on a bulk, they're like, oh man, I overate and my abs disappeared. But it's like, well, what did you eat that day? Right? Did you, eat way too much sodium and stuff? Did you eat a bunch of junk food, a bunch of MSG stuff that bloated you? Okay, if you didn't do that, you're probably not going to lose your abs. It depends on what you fed yourself. But if someone follows a reasonably strict diet and they get pretty dang lean and they're used to whatever those intakes are, let's say they do a higher sodium diet, but they do it all the time. And they're lean enough that a little water retention doesn't make them lose their six pack, then they're going to stay looking lean year round. Hey, they're gonna stay there. And that's what I mean. There is really no need for us to get fat. There is no need for it. And again, I'm not saying trying to stay contest shredded. I'm talking 10%, 12%. Those sort of numbers you can stay at. And the other thing is, for a lot of people, I would say they can focus on recomp and protein overfeeding. Let's say they get down to where they're like, well, I'm lean. I'm not quite as lean as I want to be, but I want to make gains. Okay, well, you can probably recomp a little from there then, particularly if you follow some of these protein overfeeding strategies. All right, again, if you keep your diet tight, you can stay there. Okay, you can stay in shape all the time. The downside is that it means you're going to have to stay pretty tight with what you eat. You're not going to be able to really, treat yourself a lot. You're going to have to maintain your calories. You're going to have to make sure that if you don't have large changes all the time in your electrolytes. You're going to need to stay pretty consistent with what you do. You're going to need to keep the protein really high. Okay, so that means for a lot of people, maybe doing, like I've discussed, whether you do a little intermittent fasting and then you protein load, or you just simply focus really heavy on protein all day long, like 50% of your calories from protein, and then maintain fairly tight calorie control, irrespective of whether you work in treats or not. Okay, and people may have to do that. But if you do that, we can, again, largely eliminate this bulk and cut cycle. Guys can literally just make lean gains year round. Because, again, guys are like, well, I want a certain look. So you're going to try to get that look, but to only have it for 2 weeks. Only going to have it for your vacation to go to the beach. This seems kind of ridiculous. Like, what's the point of that? If you're not going to try to stay there most of the time. And I guess that's the real question we have to ask. And as someone who's made a fitness lifestyle and used to get sloppier because I chased strength instead of the aesthetic or physique side, I do have to ask, if someone really cares about their physique, why aren't you staying in shape year round? I mean, I remember Lee Haney, the bodybuilder, saying that, once he retired, he's like, a lot of these pro bodybuilders today, they're not professional. He's like, they get out of shape so much that they need an extreme diet then for a bodybuilding show because they got fat and sloppy in the off season. He's like, it's very unprofessional. And I would come over and say, for a fitness lifestyle, it's very unfit to do that. It isn't fit. We shouldn't be doing that if we care about our fitness. And I am someone who has been guilty of that in the past myself. And so again, I'm not over here preaching to people as if I'm perfect. I'm saying, hey, look, I used to do this same thing, but we can all do a lot better than that. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.